This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
On the eve of his speech at the UN General Assembly, Iranian President Ahmadinejad has chosen Columbia University as a platform to address the American people. At the university, Ahmadinejad was faced with the public criticism campaign, which is unusual treatment for a visiting president. He ignored the criticism and said that more research into the Holocaust must be done and that it's unfair that the Palestinians have to pay the price for it.
Outside Columbia University, demonstrators gathered to protest the university's invitation to the Iranian president, accusing him of being a dictator. However, they were surprised by the university president Lee Pollinger's severe and personal criticism of the Iranian president, with no regard for his choice of words.
Let us be clear from the beginning, Mr. President. You exhibit all the signs of a petty and cruel dictator.
President Ahmadinejad condemned the introduction, describing it as an inappropriate insult.
In Iran, we don't think that it is necessary to commence with claims before the speech is even given.
The university students, most of whom were Jews, did not welcome Ahmadinejad.
His response to the Holocaust, the September 11th attacks, and homosexuals shows that he does not have the facts. His response also shows that his view of the world is distorted.
I don't believe him. No, I do not believe him. But what he said about the Palestinian plight is right.
Iranian female students defended Ahmadinejad's comments pertaining to the freedom of expression in Iran, but they did not have significant effects on the other students. The Iranian president has been accustomed to being welcomed in the West in the name of free expression. However, the president of Columbia University this time has used this right of free expression to become the new hero in the eyes of his students. Emil Baroudi, Dubai Television, New York.
The Iranian president also undermined claims of a possible military confrontation with Washington and said that the threats of war are only propaganda aimed at covering up the U.S.'s failure in Iraq. Ahmadinejad used the opportunity to send an assuring message to the world, stressing Iran's commitment to having good relations with its neighbors without giving up its right to defend its territory.
Iran will not attack any other country. Our strategy of defense does not include the intent to attack other countries. Our military capabilities are structured to be defensive in nature. Iran is a country that has lived in peace with its neighbors for hundreds of years. Iran has never tried to expand its territory or control other areas. However, it is certain that Iran is very qualified to protect its own territory.
Joining us from London, Iyad Abu Shakra, a journalist from Al-Sharq Al-Awsat newspaper. Mr. Iyad, good evening. The tone of Ahmadinejad's speech at Columbia University was calm. Is this due to the fact that he was speaking at a university?
It was very clear that he used a different style of speech while addressing students of a prestigious American university in the heart of New York, where the largest Jewish American community resides. This was a very different style of speech from the one he usually uses to address Iranians. He usually uses incitement, and his words are full of emotions. In this speech at Columbia University, he used what Americans call a charm offensive. He tried to contain his anger while presenting the image of a moderate, diplomatic, and flexible leader despite the hostile environment. I think he was psychologically prepared to deal with this environment.
Mr. Iyad, the Iranian president denied saying that the Holocaust never happened. What made him change his belief, which he has held for a long time?
He talked about the Holocaust in an objective manner. He said that if there are claims that the Holocaust did take place, then let there be an investigation. This is what he said, but he has never said that in Iran, not one single time. In his speeches in Iran, he has said that the Holocaust never happened and that it has been exaggerated. He wanted to present his views in an objective manner so that university students could relate to it. He said that if there are claims about the Holocaust, then we should conduct an investigation, like those conducted for other massacres in the world.
Controversy is raging around the world today as Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad prepares to address the United Nations General Assembly. That will happen later tonight. The hardline leader sparked outrage and derision last night as he delivered an address at New York's Columbia University. IBA's Erin Viner brings us the story.
Ahead of his scheduled address to the United Nations General Assembly, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad made the most of every moment spent in New York today, including offering to host Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in Tehran, an invitation that was accepted. The visit of the hardline Shiite leader on American soil has aroused worldwide wrath, including, somewhat surprisingly, that of his Columbia University hosts last night.
Let's then be clear at the beginning. Mr. President, you exhibit all the signs of a petty and cruel dictator. And so I ask you, why have women, members of the Baha'i faith, homosexuals, and so many of our academic colleagues become targets of persecution in your country?
Despite Bollinger's tough words, the Iranian president was all smiles as he took to the podium. Utilizing occasional charm and humor amid copious references to the Quran, Ahmadinejad sidestepped questions and attempted to defend the Islamic Republic's record on human rights and nuclear development. Ahmadinejad was received politely by his audience until he challenged the veracity of the September 11th terror attacks. Asked about his repeated and consistent denial of the Holocaust, the militant leader insisted on linking the issue to that of the Palestinians.
Given this historical event, if it is a reality, we need to still question whether the Palestinian people should be paying for it or not.
Ahmadinejad refused to say whether he still intends to threaten Israel's right to exist and said that the issue of the, quote, 60-year-old problem of the Zionist entity should be brought to the vote of the Palestinian people. Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni joined off-campus demonstrators protesting Colombia's inclusion of Ahmadinejad at its annual World Leaders Forum.
There's a need to stop Ahmadinejad, his hatred, his incitement, his ideas which are based on extreme ideology.
President Shimon Peres said the Iranian president lied in the course of his speech at Columbia University and put on a pathetic show. Peres told reporters today all the intelligence agencies in the world know that Tehran is building a nuclear bomb, and he wondered aloud, if Ahmadinejad's intentions are peaceful, why does he need missiles with a range of 1,500 kilometers? The president said he accepts Ahmadinejad's proposal to hold a worldwide referendum to judge whether the Iranian president is serving the cause of peace, justice, and love. Peres rejected arguments of the president of Columbia University, Lee Bollinger, for inviting Ahmadinejad to speak on campus. Shimon Peres said a forum where lies are permissible is not an academic forum.
I saw that one of the professors of the Columbia University says that if Hitler would be alive, they would invite Hitler. That there is a need to have a dialogue with Hitler as well. Well, there was a dialogue with Hitler as well. Chamberlain did it. He went to him. He talked with him. What was the result? He helped Hitler to camouflage his attempt to conquer Europe, his attempt to build gas chambers, his attempt to kill people.
Hamas claimed that Israel has failed to hold up its end of the prisoners exchange deal and threatened to abduct more Israeli soldiers. The families of the Palestinian prisoners organized a demonstration demanding the release of their imprisoned children. Meanwhile, the representative of the Nativity Church called on the Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas and all human rights organizations to work hard to return the prisoners to their families in the West Bank.
الثاني عشر من شهر رمضان يوم خص فيه الفلسطينيون أسراهم في السجون الإسرائيلية.
The 22nd day of the holy month of Ramadan was designated for the Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. Palestinians marched and demonstrated in front of the center of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Gaza, revealing the occupiers' crimes and mistreatment of the prisoners. They asked each Palestinian and Arab leader to make a real effort to release and prioritize the prisoners during any upcoming negotiations with the occupation. The prisoners' families were delighted to hear that Israel intends to release 90 Palestinian prisoners. However, they demanded the release of all Palestinian and Arab prisoners from Israeli jails.
Liberating the prisoners is much more important than liberating the land at this point. The land has been occupied for the last 6 decades. The prisoners must be released before they die in jail.
90 prisoners is not enough. We want the release of all prisoners. We want to see them. We have not visited them in over 5 months.
She's only a child. She wakes up in the middle of the night asking for her mom and dad. Her father is a prisoner and her mother died. How can anyone accept this injustice? Her father died while crying, Allah, 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 until his final breath.
Hamas blames Israel for failing to negotiate the release of the Palestinian prisoners and the Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. They reiterated that the Palestinian people will use any and all means to free their prisoners.
We, Hamas, recognize the game. Israel is playing with the prisoners by releasing only those prisoners belonging to a particular group. We call on the occupiers to abide by the Palestinian terms that all prisoners must be released regardless of their background. If they refuse to do so, and if Ulmer continues to reject the liberation of the Palestinian prisoners, then the IDF soldier Gilad Shalit should prepare himself to welcome more of his comrades into detainment.
The representatives of the Nativity Church of Bethlehem, who participated in the demonstration in Gaza, demanded that the prisoners be returned to their families in Gaza in order to stop the suffering.
We call on President Mahmoud Abbas and all the human rights organizations to work to bring us home. Our exile is a crime against humanity and our basic human rights. On this day, we demand the return of all those exiled, including the 26 in Gaza and the 13 that are scattered throughout Europe.
Amid forced expulsion, migration, and exile, the Palestinians welcome and bid farewell to one Ramadan after another. Nothing changes but the number of years spent in prison, where they endure separation, deprivation, and mistreatment in Israeli jails. Mustafa Abdel Hadi Al-Alam, in front of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Gaza, Palestine.
Somali President Abdullah Yusuf and his Prime Minister Ghedi have been conducting meetings and activities in the cities of Mogadishu and Badawa after major differences between the two men were recently intensified. The Somali parliament is expected to intervene to decide on the contentious issues between the two men. If these differences continue, many fear that it will lead to a setback of efforts to return security and stability to the country, especially after the Somali government, backed by Ethiopian forces, defeated the Islamic courts at the end of last year.
Signs of a crisis between the two towers of Somali authority may be seen as destroying all that has been built in the recent past, if anything has actually been built at all. This is what the first deputy of the Somali parliament warned against in his speech to the parliament in Badawa. The differences between President Abdullah Yusuf Ahmed and his Prime Minister Ali Muhammad Ghedi have existed since the Somali government was formed in Nairobi in 2004. However, many believe that tensions between the two men in recent days have become more intensified. The crisis exploded after the Prosecutor General ordered the arrest of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and charged him with stealing state funds. This step was legally sanctioned by the President, but to the Prime Minister it was the stab of death amidst news reports that the struggling President and his government may be dismissed. This power struggle has highlighted other differences concerning which side can make unilateral agreements with foreign companies for oil exploration contracts in Somalia, who controls international aid, which the government receives, and the domestic direction of funds from airports and port taxes. Recent developments and intense efforts by both men to win this battle have placed the interim government, which is struggling with the burden of achieving security successes in Mogadishu, in an unenviable position. The question remains, where is Ethiopia and its forces in this current row? Sources indicate that there are Ethiopian efforts to contain the crisis from all sides. However, will Ethiopia succeed again this time? Or is there no solution to this situation? One man's loss is another man's gain. This is what was said by the current opposition, which has become politically and militarily active recently. In Asmara, a political alliance has been formed to oppose the government's policies and the presence of Ethiopian forces. In the south of the country, Islamic courts' military training camps have been formed for the first time after their defeat at the end of last year. In summary, these signs indicate that the upcoming days in Somalia will be full of events that may have major effect on a country that has been marred in civil wars for the past 17 years.
Today, Iraq's High Criminal Court held a trial session in Baghdad where 15 defendants from the former Iraqi regime are standing trial on charges of committing crimes against humanity in a case that has become known as the Shaaban Uprising of 1991.
During today's session, the court listened to the testimonies of several witnesses for the prosecution. Meanwhile, Iraq's criminal prosecutor, Munjith al-Faroun, said that the court has corroborative evidence, including video and audio documents, confirming defendants' involvement in a series of crimes against the Iraqi people.
Iraq's High Criminal Court listened today to the testimonies of several defendants and witnesses in a case that has become known as the Shaaban Uprising of 1991. The court resumed today in Baghdad, where 15 defendants, including Ali Hassan al-Majid, are standing trial for crimes stemming from their role in the killings of tens of thousands of Iraqi civilians. 3 defendants, al-Majid, Sultan Hashim, and Hussein Rashid al-Takriti, are currently on death row after they were found guilty and sentenced to death in the Anfal trial.
Nearly 10 or 11 individuals were killed. Some of the bodies were covered by blankets and others were dragged by dogs.
The 3 main defendants received death sentences by the same court in the Anfal case, and the decision was affirmed by the appellate court. The death sentence is to be carried out within 20 days from the decision of the appellate court, which has presented video and audio evidence against the defendants. Moreover, the court has appointed public defenders for the defendants.
The court took note that the lawyers of the defendants were not present in today's session. We hereby appoint lawyers from the Public Defender's Office to present the defendants. The court lacks authority over the Americans, and therefore we cannot demand them to provide protection for the lawyers. I am the head of this court, and I do not have the authority to hire Americans to protect me or anyone else. If I need protection, I will seek the help of the Iraqi police and army. The Iraqi army is in charge of protecting me and everyone in this court.
In this trial, which is the third of its kind, following the prominent cases of Tujail and Anfal, 15 leaders from the former Iraqi regime are being tried on crimes against humanity. Among the defendants is al-Majid, who was then in charge of the Iraqi Army Southern Command and a member of the dismantled Revolutionary Council. Al-Majid played a leading role in the quelling of the uprising of 1991, in which 100,000 Iraqi civilians were killed.
Several refugee camps in the Sudanese region of Darfur have witnessed an unprecedented increase in the number of residents returning to their villages and towns, where stability and security have tremendously improved. The humanitarian aid pledged by several donor countries, including the People's Republic of China, has helped the people of Darfur meet their daily needs.
الخطوات المتسارعة والجهود المتصلة التي تبذلها الدولة لبسط الأمن والاستقرار بدارفور.
The quick action and the restless efforts exerted by the Sudanese government to restore security and stability in the region of Darfur have finally paid off. This encouraging news has overshadowed life in the refugee camps, where many have voluntarily started to return to their villages and towns. In addition, the humanitarian aid pledged by several donor countries was a motivating factor for the refugees to return home, where the living conditions have improved. Meanwhile, China sent aid to help the reconstruction efforts in Darfur.
This aid from China will help us improve the water system in the region. Water was one of the main reasons for the struggle in Darfur. In addition, it will help us improve the healthcare system in the region, which is in dire need for such services.
The Chinese government pledged 80 million Chinese yuan for Darfur, aimed at helping the reconstruction and development efforts in the region. The aid will help improve all sectors of life in Darfur and help the transition for returning refugees. This news symbolizes the good relationship between Khartoum and Beijing.
God willing, this reflects the true feeling of the Chinese people towards the Sudanese. We hope this news will help restore stability, peace, and security in Darfur and the entire country.
Amidst the ongoing international efforts to help restore the humanitarian situation in Darfur and move the political process forward, one can conclude that the crisis in the region is on its way to being resolved once and for all, especially since many residents in Darfur firmly believe that the time has come to dispel hatred and discrimination and work hard to develop the region and move forward.
Yes, on the issue of Lebanon, Ban Ki-moon said he hoped the country would resolve its political crisis through national reconciliation. That seems as far away as ever.
Yes, this was the day that Lebanon's parliament was supposed to elect a new president, but a boycott by opposition MPs forced the vote to be delayed for a month. Zaina Hodder has those details from Beirut.
The much-anticipated date arrived and the 60-day countdown to elect a new president began. Amid tight security, deputies headed to the parliament building in downtown Beirut under armed escort from a heavily guarded hotel not far from here. Most of them were from the March 14 coalition pro-government camp.
What we're doing today is we're here just because it's our duty to be here to vote for a president. We cannot have our own interpretation of the Constitution. The Constitution is clear, and at the end of the mandate of Emil Lahoud, there should be a new president.
They entered the legislature's assembly hall, the first time this chamber has been opened in almost a year since the political crisis between the pro-government camp and the opposition began. But the 68 deputies of the March 14 coalition falls short of the two-thirds quorum for an election to be held. The opposition has 59 deputies. Most of them stayed away. This led House Speaker Nabi Berri, a leading member of the opposition, to adjourn the session and postpone it to October the 23rd. The door may have been shut today, but there still is a chance of a compromise.
Today we support Michel Aoun, and if there's going to be any changes, we would have to do this with by a dialogue and to see why they refuse Michel Aoun. What is the reason that they refuse him? They have to give us a good reason, and then everything is we can talk about it. We're willing to compromise.
Tuesday's session was in many ways symbolic. Banners with photos of 6 deputies who were assassinated over the past 3 years were carried by some of their colleagues. Deputy Antoine Ghanem, the latest politician killed last week.
We have to give all the dialogue possible to reach an agreement, because We don't want to have Lebanon divided. We want to have all Lebanon together. This is the first job of any president elected.
If the deadlock persists and an opposition boycott prevents a two-thirds quorum in parliament, the March 14 group has threatened to elect a president by simple majority on November the 14th, 10 days before the constitutional deadline. The feuding parties have been speaking about the importance of reaching a consensus, and in what was seen as a positive development, Bari held talks with MP Saad al-Hariri, the leader of March 14, for the first time in months. The election is not just about the presidency, but a struggle for Lebanon's identity and foreign allegiances. The pro-government camp does not want Syria to regain influence here, while the opposition doesn't want the new president to be under Washington's influence, because that person would work for the disarmament of Hezbollah. Parliament has until November 23 to reach a final decision. Without one, Lebanon may find itself going back in time to the final years of the civil war, when it had two rival administrations. Zena Khudr, Al Jazeera, Beirut.
I'm Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now!, here to ask you for support for Mosaic, world news from the Middle East. You know, in media news, a new study shows that corporate news coverage of the Iraq War has dropped sharply in the last 4 months. According to the Project for Excellence in Journalism, the Iraq War accounted for just 15% of news coverage, 19% of the network evening newscasts. We need more coverage of the Middle East, not less. We are talking right now about living in a time of war, and it is up to us in a democratic society to decide what to do about that. Mosaic provides information from the Middle East, from countries in the Middle East, from a Middle Eastern perspective. It is invaluable. And right now they need $200,000 to continue their work, to continue their coverage, to bring you their fall lineup of this essential program. The number to call to make your pledge is 866-485-8848. That's 866-485-8848. You can also pledge online at linktv.org. Please pledge as much as you can. Information is power. When you have information, you are empowered to do something about it. That's what Mosaic provides. Again, they're trying to raise $200,000. In order to do this, you can be a small or large part of that. Pledge 25, pledge 50, pledge 200, pledge 500. Mosaic needs you. If you've needed Mosaic for information, now they're asking you to help them reach their goal. That number again is 866-485-8848. That's 866-485-8848. Make your pledge, make it now. You can also pledge online at linktv.org. That number is the lifeline for Mosaic. 866-485-8848. Make the call that makes the difference. This is viewer-sponsored media. You are the engine of this program. Mosaic provides a unique perspective from many different countries in the Middle East. Please give your support to independent media. 866-485-8848. And thanks so much.
Mosaic needs your support. Help us reach our goal to raise $200,000 by the end of the year to keep Mosaic on the air. Pledge your gift today at 1-866-485-8848 or linktv.org. Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news. with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.